Before taking this course, I thought of citizenship primarily as a legal status, a matter of documentation, rights, and national belonging. However, in this class, my opinions radically transformed this understanding by introducing me to the idea that citizenship is deeply connected to one's personality or identities, social location, and lived experience with interesting systems of power. As someone born and raised in Poland, I previously assumed that being a good citizen was simply about voting, obeying laws, and being kind to others. But through readings like Barbara Thomas, I realized that being a citizen also involves sitting with discomfort, especially when recognizing the colonial structures that shape Canada's institutions. This course pushed me to expand my definition of citizenship into something lived, relational, and political. It made me realize how deeply connected our personal identities are to historical injustices, global systems, and our responsibility moving forward. Wounds challenged my assumption by introducing the idea of shared belonging. Instead of a singular Canadian identity, I've had always believed multiculturalism was inherently inclusive, but this reading made me question how much belonging is truly shared in a country founded on colonialism. In the reading of Thomas, it helped me embrace discomfort as a necessary for growth. As someone who has never had to think about my citizenship status as a fear of deportation, I started recognizing how the invisibility is part of my privilege. This course helped me connect my personal experiences to broader systems of colonialism and global inequality. It taught me that understanding my personality is the first step towards accountable citizenship. Furthermore, we acknowledge the decolonization of citizenship. In their readings of Smith and Rogers, the reading reframed citizenship as not just a legal status, but as a set of relationships rooted in a responsibility and solidarity. I learned that decolonization citizenship means challenging settler entertainment and recognizing indigenous sovereignty. What reasoned most was the call for action. That being, an ally requires effort, learning, and humility. This reading helped me see how citizenship can weaponize to exclude and how it must be reimagined through decolonized perspectives. It pushed me to reflect on how institutions like education, law, and media often reproduce colonial frameworks, and how true decolonial citizenship requires a dismantling of those structures. It made me realize that decolonization isn't a metaphor, but a material practice, one that demands ethical commitments, not symbolic gestures. Moving on, in the readings of Misachek connects environmental justice to global citizenship, which was a new thing to me. I have always thought of climate change as a science issue, not a citizenship issue. This article showed how the global north disproportionately harms the global south, and how global inequality is embedded in our consumption habits. It made me reflect on my daily actions, the food I eat, the waste I create, the silence I maintain. I began to realize the global citizenship means taking responsibility for people beyond my borders. More importantly, I began to recognize the need for justice, a climate-conscious approach, meaning learning that intertwines ecological literacies with social justice. Environmental destruction isn't just harming ecosystems. It's deepening inequality, displacement, and exploitation. Mishachek's readings taught me that caring about the environment also means caring about colonial legacies, extractive economies, and the people most vulnerable to the environmental collapse. In my final key concept, migrant labor and citizenship, in the reading of Sharma, we see that Sharma's article hits home because my own family immigrated to Canada, but with the rights and supports many immigrants today don't have. Reading about how migrant workers are treated as disposable opened my eyes to how citizenship is often denied to very people who sustain our economy, such as professionals. It forced me to confront how deeply racism and capitalism interests. It made me want to advocate for fair labor rights and stop seeing citizenship as a privilege I earned, but as a system I benefit from. What struck me most was how citizenship is often conditional, granted to some, withheld from others, based on race, class, and labor. Migrant workers are essential yet invisible, protected by few rights and seen as temporary, even after years of contribution. This challenged my views of meritocracy and belonging and deepened my understanding of structural injustice in Canadian immigration system. In one of my learning outcomes, the reading by Carleton, I see that the article revealed how history is curated to favor sellers' perspectives. I never realized how often our collective memory erases colonial violence. In Carleton's piece, it helped me understand how narratives about Canadians' identity are shaped by what we choose to remember and forget. I now question the stories we're told about Canada as peaceful and inclusive. It made me more critical of symbols like Canada Day or our national anthem, which don't reflect the reality of Indigenous history. This outcome, understanding the ideology and historical factors shaping connections between nations and communities, was essential to my learning in this course. It helped me see how historical legacies like colonialism, migration, and land dispossession have long-term effects on how nations relate to each other and to marginalized communities within their borders. These connections are often framed through a Western lens that centers settler identity while ignoring or minimizing Indigenous histories acknowledges. Realizing this pushed me to reflect on Canada's relationships with Indigenous nations and how historical treaties have been undermined or ignored over time. I began questioning how national myths serve to protect settler comfort rather than promote truth and reconciliation. This outcome taught me that understanding history isn't about memorizing dates. It's about understanding systems of power, memory, and resistance. It emphasized the importance of acknowledging our shared histories and responsibilities if we are to build ethical, equitable global relationships. Moving on with my other learning outcome, a reading by LeBlanc that stuck with me throughout the semester. LeBlanc argued that Elisha requires discomfort, accountability, and an ongoing process of decolonization. These deeply challenged my prior belief that good intentions were enough. I now understand that performative allyship can do more harm than good. I began reflecting on how I participate in a settler's colonialism, not just through an action, but through the frameworks I've accepted. This course pushed me to unlearn and rebuild my worldwide view through more ethical decolonial lenses. In this learning outcome, assessing and critiquing assumptions and frameworks regarding global interactions and interconnectedness was transformative for me. I realized how many of my assumptions about Canada, multiculturalism, and global engagements were rooted in settler and Eurocentric perspectives. For example, I used to believe that Canada's immigration system was designed to be fair and equitable. But after examining deeper case studies and learning about the barriers immigration faces, I understood that many systems still carry colonial biases. Critiquing these frameworks meant recognizing how colonial logic influenced decisions about who is welcomed and who is marginalized. It taught me to challenge dominant narratives, listen to those directly impacted by systemic inequality, and rethink what justice and inclusion truly mean. Most importantly, it reminded me that awareness is not enough. Critical self-reflection must be led to change in behavior, policies, and relationships. I have taken away some very valuable information throughout the semester. Citizenship is not just a status, it's a lived and evolving practice. It requires consistent reflection, accountability, discomfort, and most importantly, action. This course transformed how I think about my place in the world and my responsibilities to others. I now understand that being a citizen means questioning systems, standing in solidarity with marginalized communities, and actively working towards a more equitable and just society. Through the knowledge and experiences gained in this course, I feel more empowered to contribute meaningful and global conversations and local actions. Rather than feeling overwhelmed by the challenges ahead, I'm inspired by the idea that real change begins with individuals willing to confront uncomfortable truths and take responsibility for their impact. Ethical global citizenship is not just a destination, but a lifelong commitment to learning, unlearning, and rebuilding in solidarity with others. I leave this course with a strong sense of purpose, more compassion for diverse experiences, and a great hope for collective action. Through there will always be more questions and complexities. I now embrace them as opportunities for growth, connection, and transformation. This journey towards justice and decolonization is ongoing, and I am proud and motivated to be a part of it.